Okay, we're in session. Now, this next part about rectification of errors, this is about the other type of error. We are talking about errors which cause a disequilibrium within the double entry system. So 12.1 and 12.2 जो हमने की थी exercises before, we were talking about the compensating errors. The errors which somehow have a compensating effect on each other and the double entry equilibrium is not violated. But today we will see where errors where debit will exceed credit or credit exceeds debit. So how do we fix those errors? But before that, we need to go back, see the trial balance, because trial balance is our first stage where we sort of check the accuracy of the data using the debit and credit equilibrium as a tool. So trial balance जब आप बना रहे होते हैं, so this is your trial balance. So trial balance usually we make at the end of a particular financial period. Some businesses make trial balances yearly basis के ऊपर. Some businesses make half yearly trial balance. Some businesses make quarterly statements. Some make monthly statements. So depending on how you plan to prepare your financial statements for your internal control, आप उतने ही trial balances बनाएंगे, because without trial balance, you're not going to have your financial statements. So let's say if a business makes quarterly trial balances, right? Sorry, quarterly financial statements. That means every 3 months they have to make a financial statement. Then obviously they have to balance their books every 3 months. And to extract a trial balance, what you see on the screen right now. So trial balance has to be prepared before the financial statements are made. And these financial statements have a certain role to play in the internal mechanism of a business. There are certain departments of your business which are waiting for your financial statements, as in the accounting and finance department जब financial statements बनाता है, income statements or balance sheet. Then there are certain other departments who are waiting for your work so that they can start theirs, right? A typical example is what we call budgeting department, budgeting or planning department. So budgeting or planning department, they are waiting for your financial statements so that they can start planning ahead. Budgeting department or the planning department is responsible for making short-term and long-term plans for your future. And how do they make their plans? Obviously, they need data. They need to know how well you performed in the past period so that they can plan for your future. So obviously, if they have the report of the past, only then they can have a valid, what you can say, a valid basis of determining how what is the likely potential you have in future. So this is actually, we will be dealing with this part in A2. A2 में जाके हम budgeting के ऊपर एक पूरा chapter है. हम देखेंगे कि हम कैसे future plans बनाते हैं एक business के लिए. Sorry. Then there is another, I'm just giving you examples, right? There is another department which is not an internal department of the business, but there is an external government department who's also waiting for your preliminary statements. We call it taxation department, right? Government आपकी financial reports के अंदर भी interested होती है. So obviously they are going to tax you. Their interest in your financial statement is simply that they need to, calculate taxes on your profits based on how much profit you make. So the external taxation department is also waiting for your financial results. टैक्स जो डिपार्टमेंट होता है, अक्सर कुछ कंपनीज होती हैं जो पहले से अपनी क्वार्टरली, जब भी कोई कंपनी या कोई भी बिजनेस अपने लिए कोई फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट बनाता है, तो अपनी ड्राफ्ट स्टेटमेंट्स जो होता है वो इनलैंड रेवेन्यू डिपार्टमेंट, जिसको पाकिस्तान में टैक्स डिपार्टमेंट कहते हैं, राइट, वहाँ पे भेज देता है और फिर टैक्स डिपार्टमेंट आपकी प्रीलिमिनरी असेसमेंट्स करना शुरू कर देता है, बिकॉज इट विल बी टू मच वर्क फॉर देम to do your annual assessments. So what they do is that they ask you that every time you make any draft statement, you send them their statement so that they can also keep their work updated. So और ताकि उनको end पे जाके मसला ना पड़े. The point over here is that there are internal business departments who are waiting for your financial results, income statements and balance sheet. क्योंकि उन्होंने अपना काम शुरू करना होता है. And then there are certain external departments who are also waiting for your financial results. So there is a possibility that if you have your trial balance not balancing, as in if there are errors, then you can cause significant delay to their work. Let me give you an example. So let's say you were making the trial balance, and the trial balance, the debit side comes out $10,000, the credit side comes out $9,000, right? So you can see we have errors like this, not the previous errors, compensating errors. Oh, sorry, Misha. Yeah, go ahead. I hope everything is okay. I hope so. Right. Okay, go ahead, Misha. You leave. Uh, अच्छा. uh, क्या बात कर रहे थे हम? हाँ, तो अगर हमारा ट्रायल बैलेंस नहीं करता, remember the errors that we discussed in the previous class, the trial balance will balance. The trial balance will not go out of balance because of those errors. But if we have a trial balance not showing an equilibrium, that means we must have some errors like this in the book. So our books must balance, and if they don't balance and the trial balance is showing their equilibrium, if they don't show that equilibrium, that means we have certain errors in our books where debit exceeded the credit or vice versa. And that means specifically that we cannot really go ahead and make your financial statements because you know that trial balance isn't balancing. So you have two options. You can put the internal and the external authorities on hold. You can say, okay, fine, sorry, we made a mistake somewhere. Let us balance our books, and then we will feed you the financial statements, and then you can begin your work. But remember, error rectification and error detection especially is a very long and time consuming process. So you cannot really afford to put their work on hold. So what do we do then? What we do is we get the trial balance balanced zabardasti, right? We insert something called a suspense account on the trial balance wherever we find the deficiency. In this case, it's on the credit side, right? And then we balance the suspense account, the trial balance. We show this trial balance artificially balanced. It's not correct, we know. The inclusion of suspense account means something uncertain and something potentially wrong in the trial balance. But we do so just for the reason that we don't want our internal planning department and external tax department, we don't want to hold their work indefinitely. So we get this balanced, we move on to make what we call draft financial statements. A draft financial statement is something जैसे आप कोई formal letter या कोई application draft करना चाहते हैं, so you don't really start making the final product right away. You make the first draft, then you make amendment to the first draft, you make the second draft, and so on and so forth. So similarly, in this case, since we know that the inclusion of suspense account over here means that there's something wrong with the trial balance, so we make our sort of what we call draft statement, and we will feed these authorities with the draft statements. You may be wondering कि अच्छा तो इसमें तो कोई गलती होगी, तो हम गलत फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट अगर इनको फीड करेंगे तो उससे नुकसान नहीं होगा? यस होगा, ऑफ कोर्स नुकसान होगा, लेकिन आप उनको रेडीली बता रहे हैं कि these are draft statements. That means these are not finalized yet. That means you are going to investigate the suspense account. But since that is going to take time, so you are going to feed them with this information so that they can start their work. Planning department बहुत accurate values नहीं चाहिए होते. They only need to see the trends, right? So they actually don't need exact pinpoint accuracy वाली values. They just need to see what the trend was. So अगर एक $1,000 का suspense account यहाँ पर आ गया तो उससे उनके काम में कोई हर्ज नहीं होने वाला. Similarly, taxation department is going to do their preliminary assessment. It's not a final assessment of your taxes. So again, they're not looking for pinpoint accuracy in your financial statement. They are just looking for a trend. So they'll be happy enough to have their draft statement so that they can continue their work. Once this is done, you come back, you reopen the book because now you need to investigate why we have suspense account in the trial balance. So you reopen the books and then you look for the errors. And uh, once the errors are determined, we find out what the errors are, we rectify these errors, we get rid of the suspense account, we make a proper trial balance and a proper financial statement, and then we are going to resend these financial statements back to the authorities. जिनको पहले हमने ड्राफ्ट्स भेजे थे, अब उनको एक्चुअल फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट देंगे आफ्टर द रेक्टिफिकेशंस. ठीक है, so we only put suspense account and we make this draft statement so that their work is not put on hold, so they can continue their operations as normal. But once we have rectified our books, once we have rectified all the errors, then it's a must that we will feed them with the proper information, right? Amal has asked a question. Does an inclusion of a suspense account damage the business's reputation because it shows external departments that the business made errors? Okay, Amal, external department over here is just the taxation department, right? And tax information is highly confidential. This is only between you and the tax authorities. These are not going to go anywhere. Secondly, when you show a draft financial statement to your tax authorities, you're not hiding, you're not trying to hide the fact that you made a mistake somewhere. You're actually highlighting it properly. So you're telling your tax authorities, okay, fine, we have a problem in our books. We didn't want to delay your work. So that is why we're sending you the draft statements so you can continue your work. But we are going to give you a proper financial statement later on once we have figured it out. So what happens between you and the tax authorities is strictly confidential, number one. It doesn't go anywhere, so it can't possibly harm the reputation of the business because it is not a public information anyway, right? It doesn't go anywhere out in the public. And number two, the inclusion of suspense account in your trial balance and your financial statement actually tells them that you're not trying to hide anything. You're trying to show them, you're giving them full disclosure. You're telling them there's a problem. And this means that you are going to give them proper financial statements later on as soon as you can figure out where the problems are. All right. Excellento. So now, once the suspense account is there on the trial balance, it is also giving us one more hint, and that hint is that in the trial balance, the credit side was less and the debit side was more, because you can see here, debit was more than credit, and that is why we had to include credit side पे suspense account का balance. And as soon as that happens, in the general ledger, we create a suspense account. Sorry. We create a suspense account, and that suspense account will have the difference as per trial balance in whatever side you find it on the trial balance. In this case, the difference in the trial balance was on the credit side, so you are going to bring it on the credit side of the suspense account here, $1,000. So this is the complete process of how suspense account starts appearing in your books. So far, if you understood every bit of discussion, then please give me a green check. Now, let's see what happens after the suspense account. So जब suspense account create हो गया book में और आपने suspense account general ledger में create किया, so that means now general ledger में this suspense account is acting like a beeping alarm. So जब तक आपकी general ledger के अंदर ये suspense account exist कर रहा है, आप सुकून से नहीं सो सकते because it is telling you something is wrong or something is uncertain or ambiguous about your ledger, your accounting information is not trustworthy, you need to fix it. So you will not rest until you find the issue. And when you find the issue, when you look for these issues, you will find compensating errors as well as the suspense account relevant errors. You will find both of them. When you start looking for the errors, you will find all the errors. So this suspense account is going to be only affected by suspense account relevant errors. एंड सस्पेंस अकाउंट रेलेवेंट एरर्स कौन से हैं? जहाँ पे डेबिट और क्रेडिट वायलेशन हो गई हुई है, जहाँ पे डेबिट एक्सीड कर गया क्रेडिट से या वाइस वर्सा. A compensating error will have no effect on the suspense account. Why is that? Because compensating errors में हमेशा debit is always equal to the credit. So obviously suspense account चूंकि disequilibrium को represent कर रहा है, तो आपने जो भी अभी तक हमने errors पढ़े हैं, the omission error, the principal error, original entry errors, all those 5-6 categories of compensating errors, none of these errors are going to have an effect on the suspense account. Suspense account represents a disequilibrium. These errors do not cause a disequilibrium, so there is no connection here, no connection here. But there is a connection here with this balance. So we are going to find all the errors. We are going to rectify all the errors indiscriminately, whether they affect the suspense account or they don't affect the. As soon as you find an error, it is obligatory. You are going to fix them, right? Where did the compensating errors come from? As in, जैसे हमने question 1 and 2 किया, हमने किया था ना 12.1 and 2. We did do 12.1 and 2, right? हाँ, वो हमारे पास अभी हम देखते हैं, ना, अभी हम एक क्वेश्चन सॉल्व करेंगे. You will find it out. The point isn't that why are we considering compensating errors. The point is that as soon as you come across an error, as a professional accountant, it is your responsibility that you need to fix that error. If it involves suspense account, you will fix it with the suspense account. If it doesn't involve suspense account, you will fix it nonetheless because it's an error. And if you leave it unattended, it will continue to corrupt your accounting data. That's why you are going to fix all the errors, right? वो अब कैसे आएंगे एनालिसिस के अंदर? We will see that in a bit, in an example, right? You get it, Alina? Okay. अच्छा, अलीना ने लिख दिया. Okay, ठीक है. Now, so what type of errors are we going? Let's start with the question and let's explore these examples alongside doing a question. इस तरह हम एक question भी कर लेंगे इसी given time में. We can actually save some time, so you can turn to page number 123 now. 123 page 12.3, right? Now we will see all of this, what we have discussed so far. Let's see in practice. So once you have the book, page 123, question 12.3, then give me a green check on the feedback window. Oops. I need a full page here. चलो हम यहाँ पे ही कर लेते हैं. Right. So NM 12.3, page 123. Please give me a green check once we have it. Good, we all have it. Okay, now I'm going to read through the question. You will read alongside and we will see the problem, right? So 12.3, an inexperienced bookkeeper has drawn up the following trial balance for Carl Ward, who imports and sells furniture. Fine, we have the trial balance given. And the trial balance continues on the next page where you can find it balances at 182750. Agree? You can find the trial balance balancing at 182750. Yes or no? You can give me a green check if you have spotted the value. The trial balance balances on page number 124, and the values at which it balances is 182,750. Iman Badr, we found that? And Maheen? Iman? Okay, Iman is struggling with the button. Right. Now, The trial balance is balanced, you can see that, but there is a problem right above the balancing value of 182,750. You can see the last value given on the trial balance is capital at 1st of October 20x4, $24,300. Now there's a problem with this value. Can you spot the problem? Capital at 1st of October 20x4, 24,300. What is the problem with this value? It is bothering me. Can you tell me why is it bothering me? Yes, it's on the debit side. Excellent. Excellent. Alicia says it should be on the credit side. Asma, very good. Lilina, Marine, very good. Amal, it's on the debit side. Capital is not supposed to be on the debit side. Capital is supposed to be on the credit side. All capital liabilities, provisions, capital liabilities and provisions, they are always on the credit side of the trial balance because they are inherently credit natured values. And assets, expenses, and drawings are always on the debit side of the trial balance. Their inherent nature is debit. So this is the problem here. And again, you can find multiple issues. Go back further up. Capital के ऊपर drawings की value दी हुई है. Drawings की value is 17,690. Again, placed wrongly, right? You can also find another problem here, right at the top of the page. Bank overdraft is given 710. We know bank overdraft is a liability. So if it's a liability, it should have been on the credit side. So, and another big issue here. You can see second item on the trial balance after sales. You're given inventory at 1st of October 20x4. That is the opening inventory. Opening inventory is a usual part of the trial balance. Nothing wrong about that. But the closing inventory over here, inventory at 30th of September 20x5, $2,100 की closing inventory. Closing inventory, if you recall, is never a part of the trial balance. Closing inventory is calculated through a parallel procedure. First in, first out, average cost वगैरह कि perpetual inventory tables बनाएंगे हम जब हम management accounting शुरू करेंगे. So we don't know the procedure yet, how closing inventory is calculated, but closing inventory is calculated through a procedure which has nothing to do with your double entry bookkeeping part. Closing inventory का आपके sales day book, purchases day book, cash book, general ledger वगैरह से कोई ताल्लुक नहीं होता. That is calculated through a very completely independent procedure, which we will discuss in February maybe. And that is why closing inventory is never going to appear in the trial balance. Your trial balance represents your double entry system here. So closing inventory, अगर आप रिकॉल करें जितने भी हमने चैप्टर पढ़े, जितने भी ट्रायल बैलेंसेस देखें, हमेशा ट्रायल बैलेंस के बाद एक एडिशनल इन्फॉर्मेशन के अंदर आपके पास क्लोजिंग इन्वेंट्री भी होती है. The point being, closing inventory should not have been in the trial balance, but it is there. So you can see the starting of the question now makes sense. This trial balance was made by an inexperienced clerk. So that is why required section part A, you can also see required section part A is prepare a corrected balance before the rectification of the above errors, balancing it off with a suspense account, just like that, just like this part, right? So part A actually asks us to prepare, what you can see on the screen here, to prepare this trial balance, putting everything on their appropriate side. And when you do that, the trial balance will fail to balance just like here. And you will end up finding suspense account balance in whichever side is deficient. So this part, right? Just a second, Minal got dropped. So let me bring her in. Okay, Minal is back. So जल्दी से आप 5 मिनट के अंदर ट्रायल बैलेंस में ये वाला ट्रायल बैलेंस बना दें. Remember, assets, expenses, and drawings are always going to be on the debit side, and incomes, liabilities, and provisions are always going to be on the credit side of the trial balance. So jaldi se within 5 minutes, if we can find out the suspense account value here, or let me just give the totals first. Total of the debit side कितना बनता है and total of the credit side कितना बनता है, फिर हम suspense account को include करते हैं यहाँ पे. So right now, just redraft the trial balance, putting everything on their appropriate side, the correct side, and then you will notice the trial balance will not balance. Then we will discuss the suspense account. So let's get started. 5 minutes. And once you have completed it, then give me the debit column value and the credit column value. Okay. Uh, some questions here. Let me read them. I just lost. कहाँ तक शुरू किया था? Okay. It's on the debit side, Asma. It is debit, as in the suspense account value की बात कर रहे हैं आप? It should be on the credit side. अच्छा अच्छा, okay, ये तो पिछले questions के answers हुए हैं. अच्छा, Mehreen ने अभी मुझसे पूछा, carriage outwards should also be on the debit side, right? Only Mehreen asked the question. Yes, I figured out all the things. So Mehreen asked this question, कि carriage outwards should be on the debit side. Absolutely, Mehreen. Every expense is going to be on the debit side, regardless of its nature, whether it's a direct expense or an indirect expense. Remember, carriage inwards and carriage outwards, they both represent your transportation costs. They both represent your expense. Carriage inwards simply means direct expense, direct carriage. Carriage outwards is the indirect carriage that doesn't change their nature, being an expense. So it doesn't really change their nature. So you will put both carriages on the debit side, carriage inwards भी or carriage outwards भी. लेकिन return inwards debit side पर होगी. Return inwards is the return of goods, and return outwards is going to be on the credit side. Marine, we understand better? Marine asked the question. Okay, good. Good. So once you calculate the debit and the credit side totals, let me know. And yeah, it's 12:05. We are good on time. So part A के लिए, we are going to be making a trial balance, right? Trial balance, right? Before corrections, right? We are going to put all the entries here on their appropriate side, debit and the credit side, right? We will put all these entries here, and then I want these totals here. I want this total and this total, and then we are going to show the suspense account. We will insert the suspense account here, and then we will have shown the balanced balance, trial balance. So
Excuse me, sir.
जी बेटे.
Can you go back to the last note, please?
This one?
No, sir. Just because the पर आपने वो trial balance बनाई थी.
Okay,
Yes, sir. That's
right.
okay. Thank you.
Yes, anyone got the totals for trial balance? Okay, Asma, give me the values. So we have assets, expenses, and drawings here on the debit side, and incomes, liabilities, and provisions on the credit side. So the debit side total is 183 to 270 on the debit side. Okay, so credit side total is bigger. Okay. So credit side total is 183 to 70. And what is the debit side total? We know the suspense account is 3140 here, but what is the total on the debit side? Must be 183 to 70 minus 3140. Amal, what is bank overdraft? Bank overdraft, Amal, is when the bank account has a negative balance, 180 130. So जब आप अपने बैंक अकाउंट के एक्चुअल बैलेंस से ज़्यादा अमाउंट विड्रॉ कर लें बैंक अकाउंट से, that is when you have bank running in a negative region. That is what we call bank overdraft. And your account balance when goes negative, that means you owe that excess amount back to your bank. And that is why bank overdraft is going to be treated as a liability. In the trial balance, it will show on the credit side. Okay, so we have now trial balance balancing at 183 to 70. This is a formal way of showing suspense account balance. Basically, again, you're not trying to hide anything here, right? आप पहले शो कर रहे हैं कि आपका ट्रायल बैलेंस नहीं किया. क्रेडिट साइड पे 183,270 का टोटल आ रहा था. On the debit side, you had a smaller value, and then you insert the suspense account here, and then you show the trial balance here. So basically, you are trying to sort of tell the reader, you're trying very hard to tell the reader that please do not consider this trial balance as final. There is a suspense account. You try to show it, highlight it properly, right? That's how formally suspense account is shown on the trial balance. And once it is created on this trial balance, then obviously यहाँ पे हम छोटा सा एक segment create कर देते हैं. I think that is good enough space for suspense account here. So in your general ledger, you will have to create suspense account. I'll just create a small suspense account here. So this suspense account will be created, and this value here 3140, sorry, not here, this value is going to be transferred on the debit side, since suspense account is representing that debit entries were less than the credit entries. So you create an artificial debit entry difference as per trial balance, and 3140, you will insert this. This is in fact part C. Part C के अंदर आपसे उसने suspense account मांगा भी हुआ है. So मैं सिर्फ order में बता रहा हूँ चीज़ें इस वक्त. This is your part A, this is your part C. In the part B, you're required to show the rectification entries, just like in the previous questions. We are going to show the journal, and we will draw the journal, right? We will have the just a second. So the journal here, So we have the debit column, we have the credit column, we have the date column here, which serves no purpose except for the error reference, and then that's how we are going to show the journal entries for date, description, debit, and credit, right? So we are going to go through these errors one by one, and then we will fix these errors. The first error is that a credit note to a customer for return inwards amounting to 250 had not been entered in the books. A credit note for return inwards should have been debited to return inwards account, should have been credited to the trade receivable account, but this has not been entered in the books. That means it was not entered anywhere in the books. That means it's a simple omission error. It's a compensating error, and it's not relevant to suspense account. Do you agree with this? The first error is a compensating error, is one of those compensating errors. It's specifically an omission error, and it has nothing to do with suspense account, because suspense account only deals with disequilibrium within the bookkeeping entries. And this particular entry does not cause any disequilibrium. Please give me a green check if you understand this. Amna and Fajr and Minal, you don't understand it. The first error has nothing to do with the suspense account. We will just simply do, let me just write over here. We'll debit the returns inwards account, and credit the trade receivables account. The amount involved is $250 debit, $250 credit, and then we write the narrative rectification for an omission error, and then we draw a line just like the procedure we discussed yesterday, right? So give me a green check here. Okay, this is just, there's nothing new in this journal entry. This is the same journal entry as we discussed yesterday, right? This entry does not cause a disequilibrium, so we're good. We can continue with in the same way. Fajr and Iman and Marine and Manal, we understand it? All right. Now the second error is in the sales daybook, there had been a casting error on, and there has been a casting error, and casting error over here is calculation error, right? आपने ओवर ऐड कर दिया चीज़ों को या अंडर ऐड किया है एक कॉलम के टोटल को. सो सेल्स डे बुक के अंदर हमने एक पेज का सब टोटल जो था दैट वाज 14625 and it has been carried forward as 16425. So basically sales day book का एक पेज over add हो गया हुआ. This is what it means. Can you tell me how much over addition has taken place? 16425 minus 14625. How much casting error have we done? Right? 14625. It's $1,800. So हमने अपनी do you agree that your sales day book overcasting has happened $1,800, which means your sales account is overcast by $1,800 because sales day book's total eventually goes to the sales account, right? So sales day book, if has been over added by $1,800, that means your sales account is also overcast, is also overstated by $1,800, and that means that sales are over credited. And overcast in sales account means over credited, right? Because sales account by nature is an income account which has a credit nature. So जब हम overcast लिखेंगे sales account को तो हम उसका मतलब यही लेंगे कि वो over credit हो गई है. So if this is over credited, then obviously that means we need to debit the sales account to rectify this error. Please give me your feedback if you understood the line of reasoning here. that says their book has been overcast by $1,800. That means sales account is overcast by $1,800. That means sales account has been overcredited by $1,800. And that means you need to rectify this error by debiting sales account by $1,800. So we should debit sales account here by $1,800. Yes or no? Now the problem over here is the other entity involved in this double entry is trade receivables. जब भी आप sales day book में कोई entry करते हैं तो वो sales account को ही सिर्फ affect नहीं करती, it also affects the trade receivables. But you can see the error description, the last extension here, it says that the individual trade receivables, however, have been correctly posted. So it means the trade receivables accounts are just fine. You don't have to change anything over there. And that brings us to a problem here. We have a debit entry over here, but we don't have any credit entry. There's a vacuum which has been created. And this is a classic, a typical indicator of disequilibrium. And we know our books already have suspense account representing this disequilibrium. In fact, I already had created it here. Yeah. So this suspense account is representing that disequilibrium. So every time you deal with an error rectification which involves a disequilibrium, you will see that disequilibrium translating within the rectification entry as well. Like over here, there's nothing to be credited here. So that creates this vacuum in the double entry system. So we are going to fill in that vacuum by inserting suspense account. Suspense account, $1,800, right? And then we are going to write the double entry rectification EWSCA narrative that this is a rectification for sales day book overcast, right? That would be a good enough reference narrative. So sales account debit, suspense account credit, rectification for sales day book overcast will be a good enough narrative. So do you agree with this rectification? जब भी आपकी let me just clear the feedback now. Give me your feedback again. The second error rectification for the second error. Every time there is an error which causes a disequilibrium in the books, suspense account will be invoked in that rectification, and suspense account will find its place wherever there is a vacuum which is created. So suspense account always fills in that vacuum, that gap between the double entry system. So suspense account create ही इसी तरह से हुआ था. Suspense account create कैसे हुआ था कि there was a gap in the double entry system on the trial balance, and suspense account was born because of that gap. And similarly जब आप उसकी rectification कर रहे होंगे तो आपके पास उन rectifications के अंदर भी एक vacuum create होगा, एक gap create होगा, and suspense account will keep on filling those gaps. Okay, Fajr and Iman Badr, we understand? Sorry. Okay, Fajr is struggling with the button. The third error is due to a transposition error. Telephone expenses 570 had been entered in the telephone account as 790. This is not a transposition error. This is a mistake here again. ये ट्रांसपोजिशन एरर होता अगर टेलीफोन एक्सपेंसेस 570 की बजाय 750 के तौर पर रिकॉर्ड होते. The transposition error is usually swapping of the digits. So in here there is no swapping of the digits. So this is not a transposition error. But it's an error and we will fix it. So basically you can read this statement as due to an error, telephone expenses 570 had been entered in the telephone account as 790. So you have overstated your telephone expense account. So let me reason it out here. So telephone is an expense, right? Telephone expense is overstated by how much? 570 and 790 की difference कितना होगा? 220 overstated by 220. And now we will define what do we mean by overstated depending on the nature, since expense is always debited. So that means overstatement means over debited, right? And if this is over debited, that means rectification should have credit it should be credited for rectification purposes. Do you agree with this line of reasoning here? Give me a green check here. The telephone expense has been overstated by $220. And if that is the case, that means it was over debited by $220. And we will rectify this by crediting it. How do we know it's over debited? Because the nature of an expense is debit. So it can overstate whether it is understood that it must have been over debited. अमल आपने पूछा है had the purchases account been debited or been overstated, would suspense account have been debited? अमल आप इसको डायरेक्टली आप सस्पेंस अकाउंट पे नहीं जाते, आप हमेशा जो अकाउंट इन्वॉल्व है आप उसको पहले ठीक करते हैं. सस्पेंस अकाउंट इज जस्ट गोइंग टू fill in the gap. Suspense account's role is not more than that. So what Amal has asked in the chat, that if purchases account is overstated, then we have to ask ourselves, what does it mean, over debited or over credited? And we know that purchase is an expense by nature. So that means purchases account overstated means purchases account over debited. And if it was over debited, then you will fix it by crediting the purchases account, and then you will arrive at the conclusion, okay, suspense account will be debited. So that is how you deal with the suspense account. You don't think with suspense account in mind. You always think with the existing error to be fixed. And then you will see whether you have a vacuum whether you have that gap in the double entry or not. If there is one, suspense account fills it in. If there is none, you will leave it just like that. Great. Excellent. Yes, purchase account will be credited. Yes. Great. No problem with it. Okie dokie. The next error is अच्छा, so हम ये कर रहे थे. So इसको rectify करने के लिए हम third error में हम क्या करेंगे? So we are going to credit the telephone expenses account. See, I always fix the error first. The error was in the telephone account, telephone expense account, right? And that was to be credited here. And that is to be credited by 220. And then I will see if the rectification entry involves any other compensating effect. There is none, because the error is only limited to the telephone expense account. There is no other account involved or affected by this error. So we can see the debit side, there is a vacuum created. Then you will fill it in with the suspense account. When you see a vacuum, you fill it in with the suspense account, right? So you never think of errors rectification with suspense account perspective. Suspense account will find its way. If there is if the suspense account needs to be invoked in a rectification, it will find its way. You just have to fix the existing errors. That's all. So now you're going to write the narrative. You're representing a rectification for the telephone expense account overstated. I'm not going to write narratives further. We're running out of time, so we'll just quickly go over the rest of the errors. You can write the narratives for your own work later on. Maybe you can skip the rest of the narratives. Now you know how to write them. Just one second. Sorry about that. The next error is discounts received. Fourth error is an invoice for credit purchases for 1420 has been entered in the sales book as 1240, but it was posted correctly to the trade payables account. So basically, trade payables account के अंदर कोई issue नहीं है. It's only the sales and the purchases account where we have the issue, right? So this is not one error. There are two errors actually. ठीक है. और वो दो errors कौन से हैं? Let me just show it here. So sales आपने purchases की थी. So purchases are understated by 1420. Yep. And sales are overstated by 1240. So you need to understand that these values are different, right? So it's not just one error, you have made two errors. You were supposed to record purchases, you did not record that, and you were supposed to record it at 1420. Uh, is this a transposition error? Alicia, which error are we talking about? Uh, Third error? The fourth one. No, it's not just purely a transposition error. Remember, in order for an error to be one of those fixed non-intrusive errors, it must be a compensating error. This is not a compensating error. It is involving suspense account. You will find it. You will see that there is a disequilibrium. So वो उनके लिए ज़रूरी है कि वो कोई disequilibrium create ना हो. एक minute. Yes, just too much this time. I'm really sorry for that. Just a second. I have to give the. Sorry about that. It's just too much disturbance. I'm really sorry. अब घर में काम हो रहा है कुछ. So, how do we fix this? ठीक है. हम purchases को debit करेंगे 1420 से, है ना? Debit purchases 1420, and we will debit sales as well 1420, right? Do you agree with this? That purchase account will be debited by 1420 and sales account will also be debited by 1240 for rectification, right? Let me just clear it. Please give me a green check if you agree that agar purchase is understated hai by 1420, then we'll have to debit purchase account. And if sales are overstated by 1240, we'll debit the sales account, right? Good. So that is how we are going to fix this error, error 4 here, right? We will debit the purchases account 1420, and we are going to debit the sales account as well. Sales account will also be debited with, but 1240. And now you see there is a gap here on the credit side. Nothing is being affected on the credit side. It's a non-compensating error. So if it's a non-compensating error, suspense account must come and fill in the gap. So suspense account fills in the gap at 2660, I believe. 2660, right? And then you write your narrative here, right? So please give me a green check if you agree with this rectification entry for the fourth error. Alina, नहीं समझ आया? Alina ने कुछ पूछा है. Won't we credit sales account to cancel the effect? No, sales account is an income. Overstatement means over credit. Sales is an income, right? So overstatement in sales account means over credited in the sales account. So over credit अगर हुआ है तो फिर rectification के लिए हम sales को debit करेंगे, right, Alina? Alina? Okay, right, great. The fifth error is that discount received 685 had been debited to discount allowed account. So again, you can see discount received is an income. It's an income by nature. Discount allowed is an expense by nature, right? So if we are to simplify this error, we could say that discount received is understated, right? And discount allowed is overstated. Okay, so that means understated means undercredited because it's an income, and overstatement here means over debited because it's an expense by nature. And now we arrive at the conclusion. That means discount received had to be credited. Discount received, and discount allowed has to be credited. Yes or no? Please give me a green check here. Right? I am writing this down here. This is just basically describing your thought process. You're supposed to think it think it through like this, right? कि अगर एक income है, अगर वो income वो understate हो गई है तो इसका मतलब वो under credit हुई है, इसलिए उसको क्रेडिट करके ठीक करेंगे। और अगर एक एक्सपेंस है तो एक्सपेंस ओवरस्टेट हो गया है, then it means it is over debited, and if it is over debited then we must credit it to rectify this error. So we are going to credit both of these entries, error 5 here, and we are going to credit discount allowed and discount received, both of them with 685 each, right? Oh, forget it. And you can see I only fix the errors. I don't think about suspense account. अगर suspense account में involve होना होगा तो automatically there will be a vacuum created in the rectification entry, and that vacuum is going to be filled with the suspense account. So we are going to debit the suspense account, and we are going to debit with the sum of the two, which is how much? 685 plus 685 is
1370.
1370. So that's how we are going to record this entry. Give me your feedback again if you understand this fifth error. Good. And then the sixth last error, it says trade payable account balance brought forward in the current year as 9740 instead of 9470, shown as the last year's trade payables. Basically, let me recreate this error here. So this is your trade payables account. Okay. The correct entry should have been here on the credit side, right? The correct entry should have been here on the credit side, but you brought it forward as 9470 instead of नहीं 974, आपने बैलेंस ब्रॉट डाउन यहाँ पे लिख दिया 9740, and this is wrong. The correct value should have been 9470. In other words, the credit side of the trade payables is understated, right? The overstated, right? So the credit side balance brought down has been overstated. So basically, it is trade payables have been overstated, right? That means over credited, because trade payable is a liability by nature. So over credit ho gaya. So in order to rectify, we are going to debit the trade payables account, and there is no other account involved. So what is the difference between the two values?
270.
Trade payables 270 debit, and then the vacuum is created on the credit side, and suspense account does its usual role here, right? ये मैं आपके साथ note share कर दूंगा after the class, don't worry, right? And then we write the narrative here, and that's how the rectification entries are done. So we understand all the journal here. Give me a green check. All the entries are right in front of you. Okay, sorry, already uploaded. Okay, it's simple. Now we come to part C, where we had to fix the suspense account. This is part C here in the small column, right? So we are looking for all the rectification entries which involve suspense account as a part of its rectification, right? So the first error obviously does not involve any suspense account, so that will be ignored. But the second error involves suspense account here on the credit side, $1,800. So we will choose the credit side of $1,800. This is going to come here, right? $1,800. And for cross-reference purposes, we will put the sales account reference, right? Do we agree with the posting part of the suspense account? Give me a green check here, right? Amal, Fajr, Hadia, Iman Badr. Okay, good. The next rectification entry has suspense account 220 debited, so we are going to put here on the debit side 220 because suspense account has been debited, and for cross references we are going to put the other account involved, just like the regular डबल एंट्री प्रोसीजर. हम हमेशा अकाउंट के अंदर क्रॉस रेफरेंस के लिए दूसरे अकाउंट को रेफर करते हैं, राइट? So that is how it's going to happen. And then the third entry here is 2660 suspense account being credited. So we are going to choose the credit side of suspense account 2660, and we will cross refer to it as purchases and sales here. You can write 2660 combined, and or you could write it separately. Both are correct. The next one is suspense account debited with 1370 with discount allowed and discount received credited. So the point is 1370 has to be on the debit side. So this 1370 is going to come on the debit side here, this 70. And this time I will choose a partial entry. Discount allowed will be 685 and discount received will be 685, right? So basically you can see, you can write, अगर दो बार इफेक्ट हो रहा है सस्पेंस अकाउंट पे तो आप उसको कंबाइंड इफेक्ट भी लिख सकते हैं, या अगर आप अलग अलग लिखना चाहें तो वो भी लिख सकते हैं. दोनों एक्सेप्टेबल है. सो मैंने दोनों चीज़ें लिख दी हैं आपके लिए रेफरेंस के लिए, राइट? बोथ आर करेक्ट, विच एवर वे यू लाइक. यू कुड हैव जस्ट वन एंट्री हियर for discount allowed and discount received 1370. It's up to you, right? And finally, we have suspense account credit 270 here. So suspense account will be credited 270 here for trade payables. And that is all. Hopefully we did not skip anything. And if our rectification procedures were correct and we have identified all the errors, then obviously अगर हमारी rectification ठीक है तो फिर there should not be any disequilibrium left in the books. So let's verify the fact that if there is no disequilibrium left in the books, then the two sides of the suspense account should always balance. So let's see if this side total and this side total becomes equal. Because if it does, that means we have successfully eliminated the disequilibrium from the books. So does it come equal? Okay, it does. 4730, Alicia. Thank you, Asma, for 4730. And this is your final check here. If you have successfully eliminated the disequilibrium, suspense account will balance on its own and will be self-destructed from your general ledger. So this is your complete procedure. I will share these notes in the class abhi thodi der baad. So if you understood everything here on this page, then you are going to give me a final green check, and then we will call off this class. Alina, yes, अभी मैं आता हूँ आपके question पे. That's true. अभी Alina, very important question, Alina. मैं भी आपका answer करता question. Let me just get the feedback from the rest first. Mehreen, we understand better? Good. Okay. So Alina Vakas has asked a question. Are we going to make a new trial balance with the rectifications now? Yes, everything that was polluted because of this suspense account earlier on is now going to be fixed. Remember this part here? Once we are done with the rectification elimination, all the draft financial statements that we prepared earlier on, including the trial balance, all of them are going to be fixed and then going to be resubmitted to these authorities later on. Yes, trial balance is going to be redrafted afterwards. Income statement will be redrafted. The balance sheet is going to be redrafted with all these errors fixed. Idea was dropped. So everything, yes, Alina, everything is going to be fixed. And this is going to be our next step. अभी हमने पहला step लिया है ना. अभी हमने सिर्फ ये देखा कि हम how do we eliminate suspense account. So once suspense account is eliminated, we are going to revisit all our draft statements, including the trial balance, and we are going to fix everything, right? So कुछ questions के अंदर, examination questions के अंदर, the examiner may ask you to redraft the correct version of the trial balance, as Alina Vakas has mentioned. Some questions, the examiners may ask you to redraft a statement showing corrections to the previously calculated wrong values of profits. Sometimes the examiner asks you to redraft a corrected version of the balance sheet. So it depends. But all of them, in practical situations, all of them are going to be fixed after the suspense account has been neutralized. So we agree, Alina? We understand? Okay. So this is the end of our lesson. Sorry it got a little long. So you can leave now. If you want to ask a question, stay back. Otherwise, you go.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Bete. Welcome. Khuda Hafiz. I'll see you Monday.